Hello and welcome to DIY Therapy. As always, we'll start with our disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not designed to diagnose or treat. When beginning any exercise program, it should be reviewed and discussed with your medical professional prior to beginning. Information on this podcast is not designed to replace medical treatment. My name is Will. With me here is Andy.
Caw-caw!
Oh, that's, yeah.
I figured we'd start it off.
Start strong.
Yeah. Really get
I mean, we started a little too high, though. We need to... We're here now. My hand is here. For everyone listening.
Is wonderful for podcasts.
And now we have nowhere to go.
Great visuals.
We're only going down.
We're already on the descent. Trust me. we're on the descent. So what's up?
Very little. How about yourself?
Man, living the dream. Just living the dream. I can't describe this dream because it's more of a nightmare, but I'm living it.
Well, I mean, a nightmare is just another way of saying a bad dream, right? Well,
yeah.
It's still a dream.
Yeah, well, I guess if we want to get technical, I think when people hear the word dream, they tend to think of
happy
some kind of euphoric, joy and those types of things.
Do you have those kind of dreams? I don't.
No, actually, I don't know if I've ever had like a euphoric, like this is a wonderful, like that's kind of weird that you say that. Does anybody really have like these beautiful dreams where everything's sunshine and rainbows?
No, it's usually some sort of weird, vaguely off-kiltered thing, sort of like, it's never...
Yeah, it's either something totally abstract or someone's trying to kill me. Those are the two things that occur. I mean, seriously, right?
Well, mine is always like... it's actually apropos about what we're talking about today. Like, my one recurring thing is like when I'll run in like really slow motion. Yeah, everything else is like normal speed except for like I'm like, and I can feel. I'll wake up like physically tired because I'm like, I've tried to push and like run faster, but it's like molasses.
Have you ever had dreams where you've eaten and then you're full?
No.
I've had that, yeah.
That's bizarre.
Have you ever had dreams where you've realized that you are in a dream and then you can make cognizant decisions in your dream? Yeah, that I thought, that's all of a sudden you're like Superman.
Yes.
It's like, it's fantastic.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. Like, I'm dreaming. Oh my God, what can I do? All right, let's put some more cookies on that plate. Funny how my dreams always turn into food.
And then I'm like, I'm not hungry.
Yeah, there you go.
Or I want cookies.
Yeah, either or. I'm not sure which one's better. All right, so what are we talking about? Nice intro.
Yeah.
Beautiful intro. If people haven't turned off yet, well.
You're like, they're here for the topic, and we're talking about dreams and random crap.
Shocking that we've derailed.
We're talking about a couple of common running injuries.
Yeah, runners. Runners in general tend to have... one, and you and I are, well, you were.
I was.
You were a runner. Yeah, you're.
I still can run.
Your demise has been well documented on this podcast. And
yeah, for new listeners, I was not like a long distance runner. I'd run a few 5Ks, 4-milers, and run throughout the week. Never anything overly long. Like the longest run I would run would be like an 8-mile, and that'd be like once a week. And unless I'd have random pains in my hip, which I, chalk up to being normal. Finally, it just got worse and worse, and limping around and still running and stuff like that. My wife made me go to get an X-ray, and lo and behold, I have fairly advanced for my age arthritis. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep. About a 65-year-old arthritic hip.
They didn't put a number on it.
I'm putting it on there.
Okay. Well,
I'm just throwing it. I haven't even seen the X-ray. It's got to be that. I mean, the way that you complain about it, it's got to be that bad.
Well, I like to complain, though. I mean, I'll just find something new to complain about.
Yeah. Well, if it's not a hip, it's something else.
Yeah, I can complain about you.
Wait, that's what you got. Let's bring out the list.
I have a really long list. We don't have time for that.
No. Shockingly, again, we've derailed.
A couple of common running injuries. One is, I feel like the first one, Shin Splints, is more of a starting. You've gone from I have not run to starting to run. That's more of a beginner's kind of injury.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would probably say it's beginners or like obsessive compulsive, one or the other.
Yeah.
So shin splints, by definition, are really, it's either kind of overuse of the muscle on the front of your shin, and or they actually turn into what would be like stress fractures of the tibia.
Because the muscle's basically pulling...
Yeah, the muscle's overworked, and the sheath around the muscle will actually create so much strain and stress through the tibia that it'll start to cause microfractures, and or just the pounding is the theory behind it. Shin splints are somewhat of still this injury that they don't, besides the repetitive nature of it, they don't really know how or why the mechanism occurs all the time.
Yeah, it would probably be different for everyone.
Yeah,
it's
pretty unique.
Yeah, it's like why I have hip arthritis and you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You arguably ran more than I did.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, being a soccer player.
Yeah. Well, and running a marathon.
We want to tell that story again?
Did we ever tell it on the podcast?
I think we told it once, but we might have new listeners for this.
Shortened version. Ran a marathon without training. It was a bad bet.
Barney Stinson did, for anyone who watches How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, it was a bad bet between my wife. I am a regular runner, but I really don't run past 8 miles at any given time. And I paid for it for the next 6 weeks.
Arguably, you're probably still paying for it.
Yeah, actually, I don't think I've ever really fully recovered to where I enjoy it. Running is now painful for me, whereas before it was an enjoyment. And even though I still run regularly, everything just kind of aches and hurts since that whole marathon. So don't do that. Bad idea.
I mean, don't go into it without training, is what.
Yes. Let's clarify. So, anyways, I think shin splints are people who are more readily exposed to shin splint injuries would be, beginners who are getting running and going too fast, too quick.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe not even think of it as fast and quick as in how fast you're running, but how much
you start off doing.
Yeah. How much frequency and how much duration you're doing for each of your running sessions. So there's a lot of really kind of cool little programs out there like Couch to 5K.
Yeah, Couch to 5K is I think it's free.
Yeah, and they take you through this really great systematic build.
Just walk, slowly building things up. You walk for 10 minutes, run for 5, or whatever it is.
So if you're a beginner runner and you're starting to have lower leg pain, the biggest thing right away is rest.
Yes,
absolutely. Rest. Certainly ice.
Oh, I knew we'd get to ice. That's our favorite.
There's always ice. But that's going to help stop the inflammatory response. It's going to help decrease any type of pain that you may be experiencing too. But it's really about and a lot of this comes down to after your runs, if you're having shin splints, you need to kind of, or have experienced them, you need to kind of gauge how much pain you're in afterwards. 5-10 minutes and you ice and the pain goes away, probably not a huge deal again. But if you're starting to have aches and pains an hour later, 2 hours later, you ran too much. So the biggest thing with treatment, in my opinion, for shin splints is frequency and duration. How long are you running and how often are you running? So those are the first things that you want to try to do to really kind of change or alter your pain.
your first line of defense against
rest,
the dark arts. Yeah, is this the first line of defense of increasing the pain is to just back off a bit,
decreasing pain.
Yeah, just to see if it reduces your pain, and then kind of slowly kind of pepper in and start as the pain decreases, and to the point where it's gone, then you can start adding. Don't jump back up all what you were, kind of slowly back into it again.
Yeah, and then the other people who are typically more at risk for shin splints are people who are avid runners and runners who are actually running long distances regularly, marathon runners, Ironman runners, those types of things. And just that repetitive pounding eventually has a cumulative effect where you start to have pain.
Yeah, I feel like that's more along the lines of not necessarily in the common vernacular of the shin splints, that might be the micro fractures kind of thing.
Yeah, typically. Yeah. Typically, I think the early on pain is usually going to be more of the individuals who, have more of that anterior tibialis
just
muscle,
the muscle aspect
that's
of it,
actually strained, and then the tibial fractures, the micro fractures. And stress fractures are usually those long-term runners that just do that repetitive pounding over and over and over again. For those individuals, it is a lot about rest. Now, those individuals usually have a little bit of like an addiction to running.
Yeah.
So that's where the major challenge is, trying to figure out how much tolerance your body can have to heal, or how much activity your body needs to heal,
versus how much you're actually going to allow it to do.
Yeah, how much you're actually. So there's a gray area of what you need to work in to make sure you're not irritating that tissue.
And I feel like for those people, it's like, what can you live with?
Mm-hmm.
Like, sure, it sucks, but are you willing to sacrifice not doing it to get rid of it, or are you willing to just pound on through it? And
and the other thing that I always talk to people about, like who are long-term runners and have this issue, is, are you looking at this short-sighted, or are you looking at this, in terms of long-term goals? Like, if you've got a marathon that you want to train for and you're 6 weeks out, okay, well maybe that's your goal, and maybe that's one specific marathon. But if you reach that, you've really, that's a goal that you've now accomplished, and you don't need to do any more running after that. Well, you can probably, try to push through that to a certain extent. If you're an avid runner and you've got, contest after contest, race after race that you're going to, and you don't want this to be hampering you, then you may have to pull yourself back. So you think of it not where am I in 6 weeks, but where am I in 6 months? Is this still an issue that's bothering me in 6 months, or is this something that you can just kind of nip in the rear end by, getting, taking care of it, taking the rest that's needed, doing the icing. There's a taping technique we can talk about, or we won't talk a whole lot about, but
there's
that we can link, that'll help with that and help with some pain. But it's really, what is your overall goal? For someone like me who wasn't training for a marathon and just wanted to accomplish it, it didn't matter. Like, I just needed to accomplish that goal. Again, not advised. But if you are an avid runner and you want to continue to run, and you want to keep going without pain, well, then you may need to back off longer so that you can actually get some distance between your last incident of pain. So yeah. Any specific treatment that you want to talk about
for the beginner runner, or the actual kind of general shin splints? Because I had shin splints when I first started running a bit. You can either stretch it, which is kind of either like sitting on your heels, basically kind of just trying to, because what the anterior tibialis, what the muscle that is hurting does is it takes your foot and pulls it up, sort of the exact opposite of your calves, right? So putting your toes down.
It's a shock absorber too, when you're heel striking.
So you can either stretch it that way, where you can either just try to push your toes down as much, manually, or just sit on them, or however it feels, or strengthen them. So just do a little bit of resistance. Because you don't need the muscle to be super strong, so you're not putting 200 pounds on anything. You just need, you can use any sort of like TheraBand or elastic cord you might find in the gym, or you can do it isometrically, where you put your toes like underneath you can lay on your, like, well, a good isometric one is you lay on your belly on your bed, and you put your toes on the end, and you try to, so your feet are like basically in neutral, and you try to pull your foot up, hold it for a 5 count, and then relax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe we can link a picture or two of these. I don't know if you're capable. Your skills are growing here.
Are you like the skills in the dark side?
No, the skills of your video and media and this whole podcast thing. Technical skills. Your technical skills.
Technically, I guess they're not getting worse. Are they? Maybe they are. I don't know.
They're getting better or worse. If they're not getting worse, then you're getting better, right?
No, you can stay the same.
No. There's that does not happen.
You're thinking better or worse?
Disagree.
You're a shark. You're moving forward or you die.
Yeah. Listen.
Yeah, those are the simple.
Agree to disagree.
I feel like you're using that wrong.
Disagree to agree.
Yeah, but just whatever. Those are the simple solutions for that. There are other kinds of shin splints, but we're just talking about the anterior tibialis because that's the most common one.
Yeah. And then the other one, did you want to talk about anything else on that?
No.
No, I'm done.
No, I'm done.
Yeah, absolutely. So then the other dysfunction we kind of want to talk about was IT band.
IT band syndrome.
Yeah. syndrome. People talk runners kind of obsess over their IT band. Biggest thing that we always see with runners that come in through the clinic is, oh yeah, I've got this tight IT band and I've been foam rolling it and I've been stretching it, et cetera, et cetera. I think a couple myths right away that we should probably just kind of debunk.
Yeah, well, first of all, what is the IT band?
Oh, yeah. Would you like to, or would...
The IT band is basically just a big old tendon.
Yeah, it's a big piece of connective tissue.
Imagine...
Let's not say tendon. Tendon's a little...
It's fascia. It's I always use this example for people who actually eat steaks. It's when you're cutting into a steak and you run across something that's not fat, it's that really white, hard stuff that the knife really struggles to get through. That's what it is.
Yeah, and it's a big fat connection. Like, think about that, but like 12 times thicker. Right?
Yeah.
And so when Will was using the word tendon attaches muscle to bone, so that's why I was like,
it's arguably, but it's more than that.
Yeah, it's really actually bone to bone. It's more of a giant ligament than it is a giant tendon. With that being said, you can't stretch this stuff.
No,
I mean you can, but the research
it'll never stay.
Yeah, the research will actually tell you that I think it takes something like 1,500 pounds of tension to stretch, and that's it may even be more than that. I can't remember the exact number, but it's a lot. I mean, it's a huge amount of force. It takes a huge amount of force to stretch the 1% of your IT band. So you're not going to get that 1,500.
By rolling on it.
Or getting a nice good stretch. Now, typically if you do find that you get more range of motion by doing like your what you would consider your IT band stretches, you are gaining some range of motion there, but it's not because of the IT band lengthening. It's actually because of the tensor fascia latte. I'm drinking coffee, so it's latte. So that's a muscle that's on the outside of the hip that can actually lengthen. That'll allow that hip to drop down more, and sometimes that can actually give you some relief. So when people are having some pain that's considered IT band syndrome, it could be because of we call the tensor fascia latte the TFL. So a lot of times it's because the TFL is actually tight. So you're stretching that muscle, not actually the IT band. So that's just kind of a myth that just needs to be debunked, I think. So when you're rolling out, like when you're using a foam roller, there's no way to actually, even though you may have some knots in that area, and whether or not they're physical knots that are actually in the IT band, which is probably also debatable, you're not going to break that up. It most likely is going to be the vastus lateralis, which is one of the muscles in the quadricep muscle on your thigh. That's the outer portion of the quadricep. So you're probably breaking that up more than anything else.
Yeah. And that's probably where if you feel like if you put your hand along the side there and you feel like there's knots.
Yeah. And if it's tender,
99.9% of the time it's not going to be the IT band.
Yeah, so that's just kind of debunking some things. But the way that you treat that is you still can stretch.
Oh yeah, the foam rolling is still good, but you're not doing what you think you're doing.
Yeah, and you can still stretch. And obviously, sometimes the foam rolling is really painful. So if it's too painful, then you might be causing more. It might be making things more spasmatic if it's a muscle than what you're really anticipating. And then obviously, a lot of times the greater trochanter syndrome or the IT band syndrome is really because of like bursitis in the hip. So icing, obviously, again, our best friend.
But you're not icing where it would hurt. You'd almost be icing up by the
hip.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I would say is like I've worked with a lot of runners in the past at a previous clinic that I was at, and it's funny because these guys, these men and women are just in incredibly good cardiovascular shape. But what I find a lot of times is that they have very, very, very poor proximal hip strength and core strength in general, pelvic strength. So The other thing that a lot of times can create less just little shear forces and movements as you're running and as you're getting fatigued is just a good core strengthening program that's going to kind of tighten up those top hip muscles, tighten up the pelvis itself, and then tighten up the core. So, when we start talking about runners who are having like these chronic hip pains, usually it's more because of instability and or really a tight TFL.
Yeah. That is a common. People will say, "I'm in shape." It's sort of like I always kind of argue, like, because I went to a small school, so I played multiple sports. There was
you're a three sport starter.
Technically, when I was a senior, I was track.
Sounds good to me.
Track, football, and basketball.
I mean, just tell them.
But I was too short to play basketball, so I didn't really start there. But
vertically challenged.
Yes, sure.
Whatever.
It's just short. But there's a definitive difference between being in different kinds of shapes, right? If you're only doing just running, doesn't really translate into other aspects of your life. Doesn't necessarily mean you'll be good at biking, or swimming or strength, right?
Or power movements, lifting.
Yeah, your body is always trying to figure out the most efficient way to do a thing. And if you start doing the thing, it'll just figure out the most efficient way to do that. Even if it's a physical exercise, it's going to figure out the most efficient way to do it and just do it. And then just everything else is going to be put to the side. So you got to constantly challenge it in other ways so it's good at all of the things.
Yeah, that's why cross training is so
Yes.
important. Yeah. Which is probably the next thing to talk about, because the best way that people can avoid these long-term running issues and long-term kind of chronic problems is cross-train.
Yes.
Yep. So whether it's lightweight weight
it doesn't need to be. You don't need to be in there bodybuilding or anything like that. No. It just needs to be
biking.
Yep.
Even things like elliptical, even though it's kind of the same movement pattern, but at least it's not as much pounding.
Yep.
But just kind of doing some things that just kind of break up that stagnant running and pounding on the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the two topics we really want to talk about today.
There'll be probably more along the line.
Yeah, and if you have any questions on any other kind of sports injuries, Will and I both have really good experience, both clinically and then personally too. We've both been athletes in the past, not anymore. Let's be clear about that.
we're
has-beens.
Yes, very much.
This is probably a kind word. Funny thing though, I did have my first request for a podcast. It was a patient of mine that happened to be like, he found our stuff, and so he sent me a message on Facebook, and he said, because he's traveling this week, he's like, okay, so I'm really waiting for your next podcast of how he's got a shoulder issue, of how to stretch your shoulder in the car, like shoulder stretches for the car.
That seems dangerous.
No, I know. It's a bad idea.
I mean, I get why he wants to do it, but this seems dangerous.
He was more or less joking.
Good.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
Not unless you want to talk about Game of Thrones.
Oh, dun dun dun.
There really isn't a whole lot to talk about.
No.
They're just kind of like. I feel.
Well, you got to give this is kind of an evergreen thing. So
yes. Yeah. So we're now the last season, episode 4.
Yeah, episode 4. In between episode 4 and 5.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's.
Spoiler alert!
Spoiler alert for anyone who has not already seen it, but everyone.
They're just evening the sides.
At this point, I imagine if you're watching the show, then you're probably up to date. I'm sure you've seen it.
But Dany, Mad Queen, prediction.
Yeah, that's basically
quick prediction. Does she go nuts?
I mean, she'll do a thing that makes everybody seem like she's nuts, but she's just angry and doesn't know how to.
She's done to me. She's dead to me. She's dead to me. I'm done with her. I didn't know who I wanted before she was one of the candidates I liked before. She can make it. Nah, she's done.
Done.
She's done. Mad Queen, out of here. Jon Snow. That's who I'm about. Maybe Sansa. I can dig Sansa.
Gendry. All the way, Gendry.
Oh, come on. Davos.
If he had a
Tormund. That's it. Tormund.
I mean, yes, I would enjoy that.
Tormund can live in my house anytime he wants.
Yes.
All right, let's wrap this up.
This podcast was for educational purposes only. It is
debatable.
Not designed to diagnose or treat. When beginning an exercise program, it should be reviewed and discussed with your medical professional prior to beginning. Information on this podcast is not designed to replace medical treatment. Remember, treat yourself.